Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we've got a top 32 breakdown for the Top Cut events online regionals that happened this past weekend. There are over 1,000 players, 10 rounds of Swiss in the EB02 format. And real quick before we get started, first, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. We're making a lot of content for the One Piece card game, especially since we have OP11 and the new star decks coming out in the next couple weeks. Also, big shouts to Top Cut for not only running the event, but helping us get the data for this, and also letting myself and also Ying do the live stream for it. It was a lot of fun. I'm really happy we were able to cover this event. And if you guys want to check out the live stream, it's on this channel. It's linked in the description, and you can check that out as well. And then lastly, all of these deck lists are on my website, Eggman Events. So you can find that linked as well. We have a bunch of events, a bunch of deck lists for this meta. We are in kind of like the closing of OP10 and EB02, but we do also have a lot of data for OP11, which again is quickly approaching. So jumping into this event, again, we did have 1,000 and plus players here. It was run this past weekend, 10 rounds of Swiss best of one, and of that top 32 we had 14 copies of the new EB02 Luffy, 6 copies of Lucci, 4 Teach, 2 Enel, and then singles of Nami, Usopp, Smoker, Bonney, Reiju, and Shanks. So a pretty good diversity, 10 different leaders in a top 32. Obviously we do see a lot of the new Luffy. I think a lot of people are pretty much understanding that this is the best leader in the game right now. It's just going to be best, I think, for this little short burst. I don't think it's going to be unviable in the next format either, but it is something where, if you're looking at the beginning of OP10 where there wasn't really a best deck in format, I think it's pretty clear at this point. And Luffy, Lucci, and also Teach took up 75% of this top cut, which I also think is pretty impactful. We also do have the leader data for this one too, and big shouts to Chippy, or I'm Chippy, for helping me get this data, just because this is usually a little bit tougher to do, so he's been helping me out with these as well. But we do see 256 of Monkey.D.Luffy, so about a quarter of the field, and almost went to 50% of the top cut. 130 Shanks, with only one of them getting to the top 32. 89 Lucci, 64 Bonney, 63 Teach, and then the rest from there you can see. But still, a lot of different leaders are being played right now. Again, it is really interesting to see how many people are on Shanks, but we're difficult to go into the top 32. And spoilers, the Shanks that did get in top 32 was the 32nd player in this event too. So I do think Shanks was probably like in contention, if not the best leader in OP10, to just EB02 coming around, having a slightly bad matchup with the new Luffy, and now it's just kind of less, even though it's around, it's not doing as well, which is really interesting. So anyways, if you guys want any of this data, again, you can find it on my website, Eggman Events, linked in the description. And let's go to the deck list. So we're gonna go over the top placing list for each one of these leaders, starting off with their first place list, which is the build of Green Purple Luffy by Joshua. So I think most people are kind of understood what the main part of this deck looks like, right? We have our key pieces of Sanji Pudding. We are playing about 3 copies of the new Secret Rare Luffy, and then we do kind of just have a bunch of like purple Straw Hat stuff to help support the deck as well. So we are playing a couple green cards, noticeably the green Nami for a searcher. We are also playing the Zora, which I do like this card. I think most people are on 2 to 4 copies of it. It's one of our few ways that we can actually interact with our opponent's board, so I do think that is pretty impactful. I think most people are on 2 copies of Luffy Taro right now. I know a lot of people are on Lucci to try to counter this deck with the amount of removal potential, and Luffy Taro just helps us get that initial body on board, which means it's difficult for Lucci in this current meta to get a double removal. Even with the 4-drop Lucci on curve, there's just not enough cost reduction without Ice Age to really get that consistently, so I think that's really impactful for that matchup there. So other than that, it's just a bunch of support cards to help us get there, right? We have a lot of searchers. Again, Nami, we've got Zoro. We also do have the When You're at Sea You Fight Pirates and the Merry Go, which lets us get another card draw and offer some protection for most of the game. I do see a lot of people just on the other 3-cop Usohachi as an okay card to play on curve if you have nothing better to do, and I think that's strong. I know a lot of people are testing out a lot of different like 4-cost or 3-cost events to try to get that Dawn used before you use your leader effect if you have nothing else to play that turn. You don't see as much spice in this one. I think Electrical Luna is pretty cemented as one of the best cards for this deck to just kind of extend the game. And the fact that this can buy you another turn is generally all you need, because you do generate a big board with a bunch of bodies that can swing a couple times, especially our secret rare, if we're able to establish it and it can attack again. So you guys know what this deck looks like. Not much more to say. Congratulations to Joshua for their finish with the green and purple Luffy. Next up, we've got Nami, and this is definitely not the build or even the deck that I would think would be getting second place for an event like this one, but it is still doing very well. Nami's been like in events in the last couple of weeks. It's won an in-person regionals. It's been topping pretty occasionally, and it's just like the deck that will just always be present, I think, especially with just kind of how the deck works and how it's an alternate win condition that's really attractive to a lot of different players who just want to have like this kind of back staple of a deck for a format. So obviously I think this deck is also pretty cheap to make, right? There's not a lot of expense for it, but there are some kind of key cards in this one that I think are different from a lot of different Nami builds that I've seen previously. So first is kind of the reintroduction of Nojiko. This obviously came out with the release of Nami in OP03. This card being able to interact with 5 costs is really strong. I think this is great for helping you bounce back a Sanji and Pudding if they don't have the Merry Go out on the field. I think there's just a lot of other decks, though, that are playing 5 costs too, which this just gets that advantage for as well. And being able to just use this for 2, even if it goes kind of like hand -1, does kind of buy you a turn from a little bit more aggression. Just means your opponent kind of has to restart their previous turn if played on curve. So I do think that's really important. So other than that, we do see the Marguerite, which I don't see this as often in the deck right now. It was kind of a staple when we saw in OP07 and OP08. It's just like a blocker that helps us draw cards, so kind of does like a duality, right? It's kind of like a worse copy of like the Love Beam, but a more flexible version of it, which is really nice. And we also see 2 copies of the Usopp. So I think part of the reason for this is that I think a lot of green and purple players will not expect this card to come down in a lot of ways. And I don't know for sure, and maybe if Philipp ends up being in the chat here or in the comments, they might let us know too. But the fact that a lot of green and purple leaders will Luffy's will just use all their Dawn every turn, no defense, and that deck generally doesn't have a lot of cards with counter in hand at any given point. So sometimes it's saying, 15k, go for damage, does 7 cards off the top. That can sometimes just be the Hail Mary that you need for it. It's a really interesting ad. We haven't seen, obviously, like it was meant to be played in this deck, right? It's like before OP11, like the only like generic blue card that has Rush, which means it's been seeing some weird play over the years too, but it can definitely catch your opponent off guard. It's a really interesting card, and it's cool to see it in this deck, and I'm curious to see if it actually did any work this actual weekend, or was just mostly kind of discard fodder for other things. So other than that, we know what the events for this really look like. It is interesting to see only 3 copies of this Nami, since this generally is like our best turn 1 play, since it almost always draws us a card, and the card that draws us is an important event. But obviously they made it work still. So not much more to say. Congratulations to Philipp for their second place with Nami. And then next up, we've got Teach. So this is the build here from Raymond. And, Teach has been, I think, in a pretty good spot from the beginning of OP10. Just getting the new support of specifically the new Kuzan, which has been really, really strong. Being able to use this to kind of cycle into whatever card we need at the given point is really great. Especially most of the time it's just like a Burgess, but sometimes it can be like a Von Auger. Being able to use this to get some removal potential, which I think is really great in this current format. One other thing too is that I know a lot of people are in OP10 were playing more of the 4-cost Shiryu, which came out in OP10, but now that we're in EB2, I think more people are playing the Liberation. So using this to not only get rid of cards, but it gets rid of cards with the original base cost too of 6 and 4. So, or 6 or less and 4 or less. So doesn't matter that if you're playing as green purple Luffy and the Sanji and Pudding is currently a 7 cost off a Merry Go, you can use this to make it you can just remove it still, which is really great. So most of the time this can get rid of like a Sanji Pudding and a Zorajuro, which is just great for being able to get that double removal, right? You do have to have less cards, or like 2 or less cards on your board than your opponent, but I think that can happen pretty often too. It's not too terribly. You just have to be careful about not playing too many copies of Lafitte. There's also like some weird scenarios where you can use your Kuzan effect to draw 1 and just not play anything, and then you have less cards on your board potentially, which means you can use that removal card too. So other than that, we kind of know what Teach wants to do towards the end game. Honestly, just wants to get to 10 Dawn as healthy as effectively as possible. And I think that's still kind of tricky to do against green purple Luffy consistently at times, but We still have, I think, a great way to interact with the rest of the field in this format right now. It's just you make players have to play your game, which always is obnoxious to do, I think, too. And you guys kind of know how you feel about Teach. So we're going to see how it goes into OP11. I think in Japan's OP11 format, it wasn't too present. It was still around, but nothing too overwhelming. But we do have the new star decks that come out next month as well. And I think Teach is like, the star decks that we've seen so far are a little bit weird, but Teach definitely gets a lot of support from those. There's some cool cards that I know a lot of people are going to be testing with it, and it's going to be interesting to see what it looks like this time next month as well. So that's it for this one, and congratulations to Raymond for their finish with Teach. Next up, we've got Rob Lucci, and this is Juan's version of the deck. And again, we just see so much Rob Lucci. Like if we go back to here, we had just so many people on the deck. It was the third most popular leader for this event, which I definitely felt when I was looking at the tables and people playing it. There's just a lot of people who said, you know what, this has a really good matchup into green purple Luffy. We have a way to kind of mitigate our other matchups too. It's always been a strong leader in this game as well, and so let's see how it does this week. So some adjustments that I see in this build particular compared to others is, one, we are playing the 10 drop Kuzan from OP02. This just gives all of your opponent's characters -5 cost, and then on play KO up to one of your opponent's characters the cost of 0. So this is great for removing cards like Sanji Pudding. If you're able to get to the late game as well, it just means that you can use this and then like all your removal becomes trivial. So for example, let's say that we had like a Jack on the board for 8 Dawn, and then for 10 Dawn we play Kuzan. We can get like a really good double removal, and then this engine just keeps working because our leader, our opponent's never going to be able to get rid of this Kuzan. Most decks just aren't equipped to remove a 10 cost really effectively right now, which I think is really, really strong. So other than that, I think we just have our good generic black cards, right? Rebecca is still very strong. Rebecca, Brooke, and Hina all work together. Kuzan's been good. Kuzan and Laboon means that we do have a lot of ways to give something -4 cost. So if we want to be able to remove a 5 cost on the next turn, we can use one of these effects with Brooke or with Rob Lucci or even with the Who's Who, and we get some great removal and kind of slow our opponents down from being able to go off, which I think helps a lot too. So not much more to say. I think this deck is really relevant right now. A lot of people are going back to Kuzan after, I think, losing it at the beginning of OP10 with the new restriction list, losing Ice Age and Gecko Moria. But even without these cards, I think this deck is good. Being able to get cost reduction on a leader while also filling your trash without any inherent cost outside of attacking is just generically super duper good. And there's still just a lot of cards that can take advantage of it. So not much more to say, but congratulations to our Rob Lucci player Juan for their finish with Lucci. Next up, we've got Usopp. So this is Justin's version of the build, and the only one who was able to get into the top 32. Honestly, like Usopp builds don't look very different from each other. I think there's some minor optimizations that happen every once in a while. But this looks really similar to a lot of different Usopp builds that I've been seeing previously, right? I think the only kind of adjustment that I've seen over the last couple of weeks is the kind of more normalization of Gyats in the deck. This being able to use it to let you attack into active characters the turn that they're played, or the turn that this is played. So I think that the fact that Kyros is really great against a Sanji and Pudding, being able to return one to hand, the fact that it can attack into something else, like this can get some really good value, and I think really slow down some green and purple players at times, right? You do have to see the pieces, right? But if you do, you get super rewarded for it. There's also some kind of weird turns where you can kind of play like one-legged toy soldier a little bit early, and then with after that, you can use Zoro to get rid of a 7 or less, which is, again, most good cards in the game right now, and can kind of set up the momentum back on your side. So other than that, I think this deck is a lot of sequencing. It's a lot of making sure you see your cards on curve, which you have a lot of consistent pieces to do so, but you're not going to see it every time. It's a really interesting deck, though, and I think it's in a really good spot in this format still. And I'm curious to see if it gets any more tops after this one. So I didn't see a lot of this in OP11 in Japan's format. I don't know if this is going to be kind of the last hurrah of Usopp for a while, but if it does stay around, I think it's really interesting. But I haven't seen any kind of evidence of that outside of the end of EB02 in the next couple weeks. So not much more to say, but congratulations to Justin for their finish with Usopp. Next up, we've got Enel, and so this is Roger's version of the deck here. And Enel did get a new support of EB02, or new support from EB02 into significantly the 10 drop Enel here. And I remember when this was announced, a lot of people were saying, oh man, this is so stupid. This card is going to be, wreck the game. Now it's going to be, tier 0. Like you're just going to get to 10 Dawn and then you're just never going to lose the game. And sometimes that happens, but I do think that this format is still a little bit unkind to Enel in general. The fact that the 6-drop Secret Luffy is just a body that can attack twice with Rush the turn that it's played, right, does mean that there's always a chance that you can just kind of lose, I feel like, in this format. So we do have a lot of removal. We have a lot of ways to heal. We have ways to heal outside of around Blackbeard's effect, which is just fantastic because outside of the 10 drop Enel, we really didn't have a consistent way to do so. And I think that this deck is still in an okay spot. It's just it's in a weird spot where we need to be able to get to our late game to be able to establish our big bodies, and we can do that, but there are some decks that can still deny it. There's still like a lot of removal that can happen, and if that happens, then you just kind of feel like you're not really doing anything right now. So all in all, I think Enel is still worth being played. I'm not too surprised that I was able to top for this event. I think this is a pretty good build for this current meta, and congratulations to Roger for their finish with the Enel here. Next up, we've got Smoker, and this is definitely a deck that I think a lot of people were really excited to test with in the EB02 format. It didn't get any new cards from EB02, but it was one where people were like, man, this is, has potential to have a really good matchup into specifically green and purple. The fact that we can play both Kid and Hody Jones, I think, aggressively and effectively with our leader effect is helpful for that matchup. The fact that, we are pretty aggressive with being able to play Smoker out on 5 and then being able to get that extra Dawn every turn too. There's just like a lot of great scenarios for, I think, this deck to succeed. And but we haven't really seen it quite before this weekend, right? This is Felix's build of the deck here. And there are some neat little techs that I do appreciate for this one. One, I do think that more people are on Beckman compared to where we were in OP10. And Smoker still was just I think mediumly good in this previous format. It did get some tops and a win in a large regional in this past format, but it was nothing, I think, as consistent as kind of like the other kind of like big 5 decks that were in the meta at that time. We do have like the Baccarat as just a one of. This being able to kind of convert any card into your hand into a 2k once per turn is really nice. I do like the Monet. I think it works in this deck very well and can help us get things into range for, again, like our Ben Beckman, our other removal cards. We do also have the 10-layer Igloo, which we get to get 2 Dawn pretty much for free every turn after turn 5 or 5 Dawn. So because of that, 10-layer Igloo is very easy to activate its cost. Being able to try and get out of a 7k attack and then kind of prevent another one from happening is really nice. And the -2 is for the turn, so you can use it on like a Secret Rare Luffy. And if they do try to attack again with it, then they're just 2k less, which is really, really nice. So I think all that is great and has a lot of benefit for Smoker. We also do have the one of tech of the Spider Web. This card being able to reset a blocker such as our Tony Chopper, which is a 7k in this deck with their leader ability, which is really, really nice. And then we also are running the Gum Gum Mole Pistol, which I think the Smoker is the best deck in the game to actually activate this card. If we have a 5-drop Smoker on the board, we already have our 6k or more target, but we technically only play the card for 1 and Dawn because we do get the 3 back off leader effect and then also from the 5-drop Smoker effect. So the fact that this card's able to get rid of a Sanji and Pudding out, even if they increase the cost, is really great. There's a lot of other cards that you can kind of remove with this too, and I think it's just in a good spot in this format. So there are also some weird times where you can use this, get 2 Dawn back, and then you can play Beckman in the same turn, just because you are playing in kind of a 12 Dawn leader half the time when you're at 10 Dawn. So I think that's strong. So not much more to say. I really do like Smoker. I do know it's like a little bit fragile and it's a little bit hard to be consistent with the deck at times, but I think this is a good build for it, and congratulations to Felix for their finish there. We're down to 3 last decks, and these are all singletons who are in that X2 bubble. And we're going to start off with Bonney. So this is the build here from Angus, and Bonney's, I think, been getting a good amount of support. I know that we've been kind of seeing some sneak peeks of what's happening in the Star deck that's coming out in the next couple weeks too, and I know a lot of people are kind of up in the air for it, but Bonney, with or without any new support, I think is still a relevant deck here in EB02 and continuing into OP11. So one new tech that I've been seeing a little bit more often with this deck is the Pedro here. So this being able to rest one of your opponent's Dawn cards, RKO up to one of your opponent's rested characters the cost of 6 or less on an on KO while you're a blocker is really good. It just means that they have to be kind of really careful about it. It's kind of like a lucky Rue that this deck can take advantage of, which I think is really strong. So that does help the deck, I think, a lot. We do see Eau Rouge also make a comeback. It was kind of not relevant, I think, for a lot of the last little bit when Doflamingo was so present, which Dofi has not topped yet this format. So I think that kind of says that Eau Rouge is a little bit more flexible to be played right now. We do have a single copy of the 5-drop Luffy. So if you have 3 or more characters, your characters with a cost of 3 or less other than Luffy cannot be KO'd by your opponent's effects. So this is just like another card to be played off your Rosie. And there is kind of like a protection loop with this deck where you can play out this Rosie, you can have your, you can rest it, right? And then also your active 5 costs cannot be with base cost of 5. So you can have this card out, you can have your Luffy active, and then all of your cards pretty much get protected from like a KO reduction. So since it's all 3 or more characters, 3 or less, so if you're playing against Rob Lucci and they're trying to reduce something to a 2 cost to get rid of it with your 4 cost Lucci, this protects it because this doesn't care about base cost, but this one does care about the base cost, if that makes sense. So it's a cool little trick, right? Works well with Tashigi and Rosinante as well, since Luffy does protect those 2 cards inherently, and then those kind of protect the other cards that you have. So I think that can be helpful. We do also see Spiderweb again pop up in this build, like we did see in the Smoker build, and then our top end of Hody Jones, the Useless Captain Kid, Rosie, and the Shanks. So again, I think Bonney's in a good spot. There are some ways for you to interact with it. I think you have a positive matchup into green-purple, which is great for a deck that's probably going to be the most present for the rest of this format too. And I know a lot of people who are still believers for this deck. So not much more to say, but congratulations to Angus for their top with the Bonney here. The next up, we've got Reiju. So this is Carlos's build of the deck here. And I do think this deck is still very viable. It is, you know, always battling with consistency, right? You can always have like your good start of Porsche with Ichi. Also, the fact that we are like a Dawn reduction deck means that there are some ways for you to, against green purple Luffy specifically, be less Dawn than your opponent, which means they do get a little bit less of their effects. You do have to be careful that they don't do the same to you, though. So it's always kind of a race of who can have the least amount of Dawn and still be a viable deck. But it's just a really interesting kind of trade-off between the two when in this format in general. So we do have some tech cards, right? We do have like 1 copy of the Judge, even though we only have like 2 bodies that we can play off of it, right? We do also have the Germa 66. We have the Gamma Knife, which is great for getting battle attacks, especially when we're already minusing something too with this Ichi. And then we also have the Red Rock for just some super removal, which I think, you know, not a lot of decks can actually that are meta can play the Red Rock right now, right? There's not a lot of blue decks that I think are as present right now compared to where we were a couple of weeks ago. So not much more to say, though. I think Reiju, right? It's very homogenized in how you have to build this deck. We have some techs here and there, but it's a good deck in this format. I think there's a lot of believers in it. I think Blackbeard is a little bit less present than it was in previous formats, which means that this deck has one like less, you know, it was its worst matchup, right? So you can avoid it a little bit more easily, and I think that's some good news for Reiju players. So not much more to say, but congratulations to Carlos for their finish with Reiju. And to end it off, we've got Shanks, which is Peter's build of the deck here, 32nd place of this top 32. And again, it's very peculiar to see, you know, Shanks narrowly get into a top 32 where, you know, in the OP10 format before EB02 came out, Shanks was everywhere, right? It was often the most played leader in the format. It's the second most played leader for this event, and we only got 1 in the top 32 and just kind of barely in it as well. So I do think this deck is still very flexible in how you play it. There's a lot of different builds to play with it. I do know that more people are kind of going into more removal cards, specifically for the green-purple Luffy matchup. I have been seeing a lot of people play 1 or 2 copies of Red Force. Just kind of having an aggressive way to give something minus 1k means that you can attack into something easier, or you can also use it to have like more removal, right? So for example, if you use the minus 1k and then you play either the Silver Israeli or the Ben Beckman, right, you're able to get rid of a 7k body, which is a really relevant stat line right now. Mulligan we talked about in Smoker, but this deck can still use it with some you know, accuracy, which is really great. And we also have the Divine Departure, which is 6 Dawn to aggressively remove something, but that's still, I think, worth it in some scenarios. Also being able to be a plus 3k on defense for your leader does add up, and you are in some good spots, especially if you're expecting a lot of 7k attacks in one turn. Being able to spend 1 Dawn to just get rid out of one of them is, I think, very strong as well. So not much more to say. You guys kind of know how Shanks looks like. It's going to be interesting to see if it's able to get any relevancy for the last couple weeks of this format. I don't think it's a bad deck right now, but it's definitely been seeing some better times, and it's interesting to just see how much it's really dropped off with just kind of this mini set that kind of got released as well. So here's the build here. Congratulations to Peter for their 32nd finish here. So that's going to be it for this one. Again, if you guys want any additional deck lists, you can find them all on my website, Eggman Events, and many others from this format and others. We also do have some OP11 data here if you guys are looking to the future, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the EB02 format kind of finishes out. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you all next time.